The persona I would like to invite next is an HR professional from the Tata Institute, India, with almost 30 years of experience in the field. He started his career with Procter & Gamble in India and progressed across companies and countries, including ANZ Bank, Spinneys, and Alpha 10 Group. He's passionate about growing people and performance. During the last 16 years, he has worked in Dubai and Kuwait as HR Director and GM HR with reputed companies like Red Bull and the Tamdeen Group. Along the way, he also studied strategic leadership at Harvard, followed with courses at Cornell and UCLA. He enjoys music, coaching, and a love for learning. He is currently based in India as a coach, consultant, and speaker, empowering people design and live their dreams. Please put a big round of applause for DTM Floyd Almeida, title Ace Your Job Interview.
Good morning, fellow Toastmasters, guests, and officials. What I plan to do over the next 15 odd minutes is to share with you my experiences with recruitment across various levels as well as across various countries. And going forward, what we've realized is things have changed. What is the purpose of an interview now? The purpose of the interview is for the interviewer, who is the representative of the organization, to position the company to the candidate and see if the candidate is the right person to add value to the organization in the short term and in the long term. Whereas the candidate is looking forward to position himself or herself and check out whether the job is the right one for him in the short term, and if the company is the right one for him as a long-term career build. So when we look at the whole concept, basically a purpose of the interview is for both parties to position themselves to get enough information and to make the right decision. Either make a job offer if you are the company, or to accept the job offer if you are the candidate. Now, this is not easy, even for recruitment people, even for us who do the interviews, because sometimes it's extremely difficult. And given this context, is it possible that a candidate, you and I sitting on the other side of the interview, can add value to the process in terms of understanding how we can help them make a better decision, preferably in our favor? So what we are going to look at through this presentation is the mindset. What's the mindset that we need to take, given that the context of business has changed? What kind of questions can we anticipate? What kind of responses can we prepare? Of course, I won't be talking about specific content of what you need to say, because that is very individual, but how you can structure your response. And should you get the offer, what decision matrix you could use to make a decision whether to accept it or not. So this is largely what we would be covering. Potential, which is now the key word when people look for new candidates to be hired. The VUCA world, what's the mindset we need, how the selection process proceeds, a response structure like STAR, what we do during and after the interview, and finally a decision matrix. And if we get rejected, how do we handle it? Now, Claudio Fernando Arroz, he's an Egon Zehnder advisor, a Harvard lecturer, and an ex-McKinsey consultant. And over his 30 years of evaluating and tracking people, what he has discovered is that potential is the most important predictor of success across all levels. He says right from the C-suite to right down, could be even your security guard. Why? Because we've now entered a new era of talent spotting, which is not brains, brawn, not even competencies, which was and currently still is at places important, but it's potential. And going forward on that, what is potential is the ability to adapt and grow, because things have become so unpredictable. And what he has defined as the key players and indicators which companies need to look for and which we as candidates need to be ready to demonstrate is motivation, curiosity, insight, engagement, and determination. These are considered the 5 keys of potential, which all of us, when we go for a job, need to demonstrate through the experiences which we share. This is what businesses are now looking for it. So now that we know what businesses are looking for, how can we position ourselves to be the candidate who has potential? Now, talking about the first one, motivation, it's about a first commitment to excel. no matter what happens, you are willing to learn and unselfishly focus on collective goals. Curiosity, this is absolutely essential. You need to learn, you need to go beyond your area of comfort. Discomfort is the new normal. Feeling comfortable in discomfort. Because when you do that, you learn new things, you're able to get new insights and make sense of what's happening around you. Finally, is engagement, what sometimes may also be called emotional intelligence, because it's the ability to know yourself, to manage your emotions, and to be able to manage your relationships, which is extremely important, irrespective where you are in the organization. You largely deliver results through people, either through your boss or as a boss through your team. And finally, determination, critical, because if you are unable to push through and be resilient through the ups and downs, you are not going to be able to deliver. Having said that, why has this changed from what it used to be to what it is now? Why has this new lens of capability come up? When you look at it, the first era which we had of looking at talent was largely in the previous millennia, where they were looking for people with physical attributes to build pyramids, drill canals, and to fight wars. So it was largely physical attributes. The second era, which started around the 20th century, then we started experiencing intelligence experience. Why? Because there was a technological revolution. People now needed more than their physical attributes. They needed intelligence and the ability to think through things. And past performance was considered as an indicator because life was pretty linear then. Now in the 1980s, we entered the third era, which was driven by David McLennan from Harvard, who wrote an article saying we go beyond intelligence into competence, where we look at what are the specific skills and abilities people need to be successful. And then we talked about emotional intelligence. And finally, we are now in an era which is called VUCA. I'm sure many of you all have heard the term. Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. It's an American Army term when they were in duty in different places where things couldn't be predicted. So as a result of this VUCA environment, we need to hire people who demonstrate potential, who have the adaptability and the agility to demonstrate growth, both for themselves and for the organization. So when we say volatile, we mean that things are changing very quickly and unpredictable ways. The environment needs you to take action when it's uncertain. You don't have all the data. Sometimes things are complex. There are too many interconnections and at times ambiguous. You are outside your area of comfort, outside your area of expertise. And still the person needs to move on and deliver. So for people who are either entering the labor market or for people who have been senior and been around for a long time, you need to handle this VUCA through another VUCA, which is called vision, understanding, clarity, and agility, so that you can handle the volatile, uncertain, and ambiguous future that you have, the uncertain future that you have. So you need to know clearly what is your professional future, what is changing around you, where do you want to go, and regularly skill and upskill. So now that you understood the context within which you are going to be appearing for interviews, you now know how to position yourself and your abilities. For example, now the old on the left, you'll see on the left-hand side, that is what things used to be like. But now on the right-hand side, great hires is what we need, people who demonstrate potential. Now, you cannot demonstrate potential if you don't have a growth mindset, which has been called by Carol Dweck, who is a psychologist from Stanford. Many of us have this thing that we have a fixed mindset. We are afraid of failure. We believe that things cannot get better, or we don't like to be challenged. We want to be in our comfort zone. That has to be replaced by what's called the growth mindset, where you, even if you fail, you look at it as a learning opportunity. And in the end, success is a mindset, because that's what really builds your potential. There is no failure, only feedback to learn, grow, and grow. This is the important part. So now we all know that the selection process, now that we know the context within which it happens, is about, there is a screening interview initially, then there's a selection interview. There could be different people on the panel. There are different things people look for and focus, and finally there's an outcome. This is the general process. And we know that there are three main types of questions that we could be asked. One is behavior, which uses past experiences to predict the future, which says, tell me about a time when, for example, or scenarios, situational, which says, okay, if this happened, what would you do? Which is largely the situations back in the job, probably common situations in the job or anticipated situations on the job. And finally, subject matter expertise, which is technical, which you really need to know. Finally, what is it when you go for an interview that you need to keep in mind? You should know that every question that an interviewer asks you, he is expecting something from you. And if you know that, you are able to position your answer to be able to address those requirements. And your answer should be unique to you. It should be as far as possible numerical and honest with facts. That's what makes the difference. Now, what is it that we need to do before we go in for an interview? We need to know ourselves, what's good about us, what are our strengths. I've listed a list here. It's a bit heavy slide, but that's for people who are reading. You can just find out if you missed out anything. You need to know the company, what are its challenges, what are its future plans, and how you can fit into it, into the entire context. You need to know what is the job. So please read your job description extremely carefully when you go forward, because then you can match it with your strengths and with your abilities. Try to get information of the interviewers, because that gives you an idea and an insight into their mind. What do you think they would ask? What would be their favorite question? What is their area of focus? And finally, practice, practice, practice. I cannot say enough of this. You need to practice. Now, what is it that you need to practice? Now, all answers have a standard format. You can use this format, which has been very popular, called the STAR format. So if somebody says, tell me a time when you were able to handle a difficult situation and come out successful, what you need to look at is putting your answer in the STAR format, which is S stands for the situation, T is the task, A is the action, and the result. I'll show you a few quick examples after this, so you'll have an understanding. But whenever you talk about this, look at working out your answer into these formats using the STAR format. But having said that, that's not the end of it. With a STAR format, you are still going to have follow-up questions, because people are looking for potential, your ability, your motivation, your curiosity, your determination, the things that you can deliver results even in challenges. So you need to anticipate these questions, the follow-up probes. What was your role? How did the company recognize your work? How long did it take to complete? So don't just make a STAR format and then be happy about it. Anticipate these questions. And I would strongly suggest, this is what I do after somebody tells me a STAR format, because people come prepared. You also want to see the person's ability to learn and grow, because that becomes critical. So what is used is STARry. Don't just be a star, be STARry, where R stands for review and I for improve. So if you said, this is what I've done, it's important for you, if the interviewer asks you, okay, if you had the same situation again, what would you do differently? And that gives them an insight into whether you are just somebody who does things and forgets about it, or you reflect on it and use it to improve. Having said that, here are some quick examples. So let's say you get a question which says, tell me about a time when you performed well under great pressure. So first, talk about the situation. In this particular one, I'm just going to skim through. The coworker had a family emergency. So what was the task he had to handle? He had to take on the project with no leniency on the deadline. What was the action he did? He requested to be a reduction in his goals. He was able to delegate. And then what was the result? He was able to finish it on time with complete accuracy. And eventually he got a promotion and a pay rise. So this is how you use the STAR format. And then you can even go forward and plan out, okay, what is it that you want to look, if the same situation happened again, what would you do differently? Remember that with each of these situations as you create your STAR format. Let's look at a few quick ones. Now, you had a conflict at work. What did you do? There was a disagreement, you tried to make amends, and you used the opportunity to apologize and move forward. Similarly, a health inspection happened, the person was ready and moved forward. So when you look at these important things, you realize that you need to move forward, demonstrate potential, and give specific examples with factual numerical data where possible. Now, these are simple things which is on the day of the interview. What do you do? How do you groom yourself? It makes your first impression is very important. In fact, they start assessing you from the time you are there. Your arrival, how you meet the interviewer, make smiles, make an eye contact, keep positive body language. Your non-verbal communicates much more than your verbal. So please be aware of that. The information exchange, that's when the interviews happen. And finally, there is a wrap-up of how things go about it at the end. Be sure of your verbal communications, how you communicate with voice and words, like I said earlier, and your body language. Avoid staring and be yourself, be authentic, avoid slouching, things like these. Now, during the interview, you would also have some questions. For example, let's say this, tell me about your strengths. Now, you know what the interviewer is anticipating. He wants to know your capabilities. Have you used these things and how are you going to be using it forward? So this tells you that how your strengths meets the employee need. This is the important one. Finally, another one, tell me about your weakness. He wants you to see if you're honest about it and how will you overcome it. So show that you have an improvement plan, why you are interested. Talk about how you will contribute and grow with the company and how you want to build your career with the company. Why should we hire you? This is the most important one. Talk about your fit, talk about your strengths. How do they match with the company values, cultures, and the key projects that the company is coming up with? And when do you have any questions? This is usually a great closing one. At this point in time, you largely talk about avoid salary, etc., but talk again how you would fit in with your values, your work ethic, your potential with the projects. And then you could ask things like, what's the success criteria? What's the work culture? What training? These are things which shows that you're interested in the job. Finally, after the interview, you could send an email, which is good manners, and when you can expect a referral call, things like those. And finally, once say you've got the offer, 4 things to consider: learning, earning, environment, and growth. Don't just look at the salary. That's only one part of the matrix. Look at your future employability through development. Besides, what kind of career purpose, what kind of progression you can have? Is the progression based on tenure or merit? Choose a company where progression is based on merit. What's the company culture like? Do you have autonomy to do your job? Do you have the resources? Now, it won't be that you get your job all the time. There are times you'll be rejected. In that case, remember that rather than look at a fixed mindset and say, failure is limitations, I can't get that job, I can't go higher than where I am. Develop the growth mindset, saying that I will learn from this experience and I will continue to apply it to other interviews. I will continue to look what mistakes I had and how I can get better. And that's, in the end, what your potential is. Use every experience as a learning experience, build your potential, and continue to prepare and practice for your next interview. Thank you.